Footballocks episode. Well, technically 8, because
We never know,
7.
do it. Oh, is it eight?
Well,
No.
because 7, while it was copyrighted on YouTube, would have still gone up on Spotify and
Okay.
wherever else it gets uploaded.
So like
But
7.5.
yeah, 7.5 episode 8, at least on YouTube. So yeah, Liverpool did what they probably were always going to do. Beat
Yeah,
us 3
we were a
0.
bit optimistic, weren't we? Because I think they had their defensive injury problems, Van Dijk out. So
I think
we
we
had
were
reason to
rightfully
be optimistic,
optimistic.
but it's Anfield.
It's Mo Salah.
Yeah, they were clinical.
Yeah.
I didn't watch, but apparently we pretty much did get dominated. But I think we had, from what I sort of read, we had spells, we had a few decent chances. If we were, more clinical, game could have changed a little bit, but they were just better, basically, weren't they?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I predicted Darwin Nunez causing Pau Torres problems before the game. Then he
Yeah, yeah,
caused them problems
game,
during the
didn't they?
game and won them the game. So really, I should just listen to myself and
Maybe,
follow my
maybe.
instincts. Although my instinct was to say that it would be 2-2. I guess. Well,
Yeah.
perhaps if
Well,
we
that
had
was the thing, is that
played.
we both expected them to score. We probably
Yeah.
both expected them to win on balance, or at least a draw. Um, but I think we just both expected that we'd score, really, and it
Yeah.
seems like we didn't. We weren't as sort of aggressive and clinical going forward. So
Yeah, I think honestly, it seemed like to me on the day that we turned up not to lose, but we just turned up with a different mindset. Like it was okay. This is Liverpool. We need to like change how we play to suit Liverpool or
yeah,
something. And the approach to the game was completely different to last season, the end of last season, which is what confused me so much because the players were so standoffish. It was so lethargic and slow. No one was moving to help create passing lanes to move the ball up the pitch. It was like you had the back four and Dougie, maybe Kamara hanging about, trying to move the ball around, and everyone else just way up the pitch stood still, like watching,
yeah,
like, so are you going to give us the ball? And then you just have the Liverpool midfield. Every time we'd try and run the ball forward, progress it forward, they would do what I think a lot of top teams do that you kind of need the level of personnel for, which is like a localized press. So when we tried to move the ball up the left hand side, for example, a lot of the midfield would pull over rapidly, like Liverpool do, and instantly surround that play. I mean, even if they're, you know, Lionel Messi, they're going to struggle to get out of that of those
yeah,
little nooks and crannies when they're being like charged down by like 3-4 players. Obviously, if you have a team that's exceptional at press resistance, they might have played slightly differently because if you can avoid that localized press, you know, left, right hand side of the field, wherever they try and overrun you, you can then obviously play the ball around the outside and you're in on goal, which I think probably we did a couple of times, but we weren't clinical enough. But yeah, that was my main issue with it, was we were just so obviously outworked. Their
yeah.
mentality was so much more intense. They were so much more aggressive. They wanted it a lot more. At least visually, what I could see, they just seemed like they wanted it a lot more than we did, which is a weird thing to say considering we're the underdogs.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell even from the highlights, you can tell that we were pretty sluggish. Um, I think they're maybe just having a bit of a good moment, Liverpool. To be honest, I think
Possibly.
they've made all these signings in midfield, and they look like, for a lot of the summer, it was looking like they were going to have another kind of transitional season because they hadn't sorted out their problems in midfield. But they've suddenly made a few signings. They seem to be keeping hold of Salah. They'd just beaten Newcastle away in the last minute in like a crazy game. I think it might have been a case of just them having momentum and us kind of not being able to deal with it. To be honest, like, it would have taken us turning up super motivated, super aggressive. We would have had to put every chance away for us to get something from the game. That's always the case at Anfield anyway. And it might have just been a case of them having that bit of momentum that we just didn't really have. Like you said, like I suppose we are underdogs, and you expect the underdogs to go with an underdog mentality, but yeah, maybe we just weren't up for it. You have to be like at it 150% for Anfield away,
Mm.
don't you? But
The way I perceived it in the moment of like, I'm not the best at perceiving and interpreting what other people's thoughts are and intentions are, but the way I read it when I was looking at the players on the pitch was that they'd perhaps been sort of affected by the hype a little bit, um, in the way that they came into the game maybe thinking, this is our level. We
yeah,
need to beat them
maybe.
in like a convincing fashion with a style of play that says we can maybe dominate this team or something. Now, I don't think that was part of the plan for the game. I don't think Emery would have said anything like that, because that just doesn't seem like him at all. I just think that might have been something that crept into the back of some of the players' minds, especially maybe some of the new players, who maybe aren't 100% sort of aware and familiar with what level of club we are and where we could be going, things like that, and how difficult the Premier League is. I think maybe that just
Yeah,
crept in the back of their minds a bit, and they thought, okay, this is our level. This is going to be like a tactical battle. So let's slow the game down and try and break them apart, perhaps. But then, when it comes down to it, even
yeah,
if you're coming up against a really high level side like Liverpool, you can't play that way unless you have like Man City level of ball
yeah. Well,
retention
that's the
and
thing is that we went down in the third minute or something, didn't we?
yeah,
And something like that is something that affects your mentality. So if,
mm,
if we were going into the game confident, thinking we can play them at their own game, we can keep the ball, blah blah blah. When you concede in the third minute, that kind of goes out the window, and it seems like we didn't maybe have the mentality to deal with that. And then also Diego Carlos went off in like 20 minutes,
yeah,
and rather than bringing on another centre back and keeping the system the same, we brought on Bailey, I think,
yeah,
which
moved Cash
changed
back,
the system. And so 20 minutes in, maybe going into the game, we would have given ourselves a good shout, but then 20 minutes in, you're a goal down at Anfield. The system's changed, so the plans changed. Everyone's a bit confused. The synchronicity is gone. Yeah, it was kind of just maybe a bit of a perfect storm for us to lose our heads a little bit as well.
yeah. I mean, if you'd have gone back, say, just a year ago, even, or when Unai first came into the club, and this game played out the way it had, we'd probably just be like, yeah, I suppose we expected it, didn't we? It's only
Yeah,
because Unai's given us this confidence and given us this reason to be optimistic that
yeah.
we are kind of disappointed with that result.
Yeah, and it's a good thing, really, isn't it? It's a good thing that we were going into games like Anfield thinking that we got a chance of getting something. Obviously, the performance and the result were a bit disappointing, but it's like the same we said about Newcastle. Is that ultimately it is one of the hardest games of the season, and we didn't perform well. But I wouldn't judge the team on anything until I think the games like Tottenham away and Chelsea away, games like that, if we lose those games 3-0 and get kind of completely outplayed, then you start thinking, do we need to start doing something differently in terms of how we set up against teams that are at a similar or better level?
Yeah,
But Anfield, Newcastle away, you kind of think, um, you know, they're the hardest games of the season, and it's very early on in the season. There's not too much to be taken from it yet, I don't think.
yeah, I think that's fair enough point. There's a lot of times you can get 10 games into a season, look at the table and be amazed, and then you come to the end of the season and everything's gone and sort of regressed back
Yeah,
to
I mean
where
that's it.
it sort of
Man
should be.
United last season started absolutely terribly, and then finished in third. Not that we're going to do that, but you really, teams stumble quite often at
Mm,
the start of a season. Like Newcastle have started the season really badly.
yeah,
Um,
despite pumping us 5-1.
yeah, um, despite battering us, they've started the season really badly. But nobody expects that Newcastle are going to be, they're like 14th in the table at the minute. Nobody expects they're going to be down there now. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
teams do at the start of the season, and we've had two easy games and two really really hard games. So there's not too much to be taken away from it. I think
well,
it
it's
will.
not
Yeah,
even necessarily an easy game to go away to Burnley in their first real home game when they have an actual chance
yeah, yeah.
of winning.
True.
But then again, Tottenham have then gone and beaten them by even more the next week. So perhaps it is easy to go to Burnley. I don't know.
Well, I looked at the XG, and obviously you can't take everything from this, but they did massively overperform their XG. Like I think it
Mm.
was a closer game than it looked like. They just, I mean, Son had an amazing game out of nowhere. Madison scored a really nice goal from the edge of the box. Like that game could have been 2-2 on a
Yeah.
different day if Son hadn't have turned up. So
Yeah,
um,
and it was weird that Burnley went 1-0 up and kept playing really high up the pitch and taking the game from them. It's
yeah.
like,
Well, I suppose we spoke about this a little bit
yeah,
before the start of the season about how pragmatic they'd be in terms of their play style, and it
mm,
seems like it'll they're going to have some kind of tough lessons where they get beaten pretty badly, and then they realise that they're going to have to change a little bit.
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
suppose it's easy as a viewer. It's easy to look at a team in the championship. They play really attacking football, and then it's easy to say they're going to play more pragmatic next season. They're not going to be as bold as that. They're going to be better. They're going to adapt. It's easy to say that, but in reality, I suppose if you've been trained as a player, as a squad, if you've been trained in a certain way for an entire year, it is actually quite hard to lose those habits, I suppose. Even if the manager has said to them, we're going to have to drop back a bit here. We've gone 1-0 up. Going to have to be pragmatic. Those players have got the same responses in their brains where they want to play a certain way because they've been doing it for a year. So
yeah.
it'll take
No,
them a
that makes
while, I
sense.
think.
Yeah, you've got to untrain them a little bit or retrain them a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
But at the same time, you'd think a professional footballer would have been potentially exposed to multiple play styles in their career. They could probably chop and change
yeah,
between them.
yeah.
So perhaps it's more company rather than the players, a little bit the players. But
Yeah, I imagine it probably is a bit of both. I mean, they're a very young team as well, so that comes into it.
yeah.
Quite inexperienced, so yeah.
So yeah, internationals coming up. I'm not too fussed, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
they are like not friendlies; they're qualifiers or something, aren't they?
oh, they are qualifiers. Oh, maybe I will watch.
I think so, but I mean, it's the stage where we're pretty much through already.
What's
But
the? Is it
they are
qualifiers for the Euros
Euro 24. Yeah,
24? They come round so quick, don't they? Especially when a pandemic pushes everything back.
yeah, that's the thing. The pandemic's thrown everything off, and it seems like we just get an international tournament every year now.
Yeah, makes sense that so
Um,
many players are getting injured, I suppose. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, we've got game week 5 coming up. Crystal Palace at home. You have to
yeah,
believe. You have to believe that we're going to do something. You have to.
yeah. Well, that's the thing is that the Liverpool performance and how we played pretty poorly. If we then go and beat Crystal Palace well, because Crystal Palace have started well, they look like quite a good team to be honest.
Mm.
If we go and beat them fairly comfortably, then you think we're still on the right course. Liverpool away was a hard game, but then if we stumble against Crystal Palace, then you think like we need to start maybe thinking about doing something a bit differently. Or I still wouldn't be very worried, but you would. That has to be a game that we go and win. To be honest, at home.
Yeah, I mean, if we lose that, I'm not saying people are going to be Emery out, but there are going to be questions as to what he's doing because it's okay to question what happens when it goes wrong. Like as much as he's given us
Yeah,
confidence,
yeah, yeah,
and he's proven himself to be a good manager so far. That doesn't mean he can't then go and make mistakes and
yeah.
potentially change things incorrectly and to take us a step back on some occasions. So I don't really want to go there though, so we'll just act as if that's not going to happen, and we're going to batter Crystal Palace. Probably, I don't know if we'll batter them. Apparently, Carlos might be back for the game. Um,
Yeah, didn't it seemed like Emery was pretty positive that it wasn't going to be like a long injury, and
yeah,
he's got weeks now with the break. So
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't really analysed how Crystal Palace play to do a proper.
no, I've not watched one of their
Yeah.
games yet this season, but they've had some good results. They scored some. I did watch the highlights of their game last week. They scored some nice goals against Wolves, but
Mm,
they conceded some really sloppy goals as well.
okay.
Um, yeah, they seem to have started reasonably well. It's just kind of Crystal Palace, to be honest. It's Roy Hodgson. They've got basically the same team minus Zaha, but they've kept Elise and Eze, so they've kind of not maybe not dealt with it, but it's not as big of a problem if they lost those players as well.
Yeah,
Um,
Mateus Frank is supposed to be pretty good as well, so
mm.
looking forward to see what he can do. I can't remember who
Yeah,
else
so
they
I think
signed, but
they'll have a classic Crystal Palace mid-table season. I think they've got enough in their team to cause problems for everyone. Like we'll have to play well for sure,
mm,
but in terms. I mean, we've definitely got more in every position. We've got a
Yeah,
more
I'd
balanced
say
squad, got a
from a
better manager.
defensive point of view, we're definitely stacked compared to them.
Yeah, yeah, and
But
the
yeah,
midfield
I
as
suppose Pau Torres hasn't given us the greatest confidence. But I think the way Crystal Palace play will kind of play into our hands a little bit when it comes to Pau, especially with Elise coming off the right. He's not someone who's going to be running in behind, causing problems like that. Neither really are Mateta and Oduard. They're a little bit less mobile than someone like Darwin Nunez. So even though they are quite physical, I think because it'll probably be a bit less intense on him, we won't see those same issues. And plus, we're going to have a 2 week period now where Unai can really sit down with Pau and be like, look, yes, it hasn't gone amazing so far, but we
yeah,
kind of knew this was going to happen. Let's put like an intensive amount of work in the next week or
yeah.
so into improving some of these aspects where we're going to come back stronger.
That's the thing is that it's easy to forget that Torres wasn't actually the first choice centre back coming into the season.
Yeah.
Mings got injured. Mings started the first game. Torres was on the bench, and then he got injured, and that accelerated Torres coming into the team. Um, I think if Mings hadn't got injured, Torres possibly would have started all of our games so far on the bench, or maybe at left back, depending on the system. Um, and I remember Emery saying in an interview, I think before the start of the season, that he's got some work to do with the physical aspect of the game, and he's got to adapt a little bit to the new league. So he has kind of been thrown in the deep end. Emery was clearly aware that there's going to have to be a bit of a period of transition. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, there's nothing in Crystal Palace's team that gives me particular worries regarding Torres. Like you say, there's no one super physical in their attack, but it's nice that we've got 2 weeks that Emery can kind of figure out what's not quite working there. Um, yeah, they'll cause us some problems, but I think I mean, we have definitely got enough to control the game and win it comfortably. I think.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fair enough. Um, who do you think? What do you think? Goal scorers, score prediction, and goal scorers.
uh, Musa,
Oh, Musa, yeah, good show.
probably going to say that every week. I might captain him next week in fantasy.
Risky play.
It'll be very risky. I probably won't. I'll probably balls out, but
I
yeah, I
mean,
think Diaby's a good shout for a goal. Maybe Watkins. Watkins hasn't scored in the league yet. Diaby and Watkins.
yeah, it is frustrating when he starts slow, isn't it?
Yeah,
But he should pick up.
he's been playing well. To be fair, he's had couple of assists and stuff. It's not like we've been missing his goals because we've got Diaby to kind of fill in. Whereas last season we didn't really have anyone
Yeah,
who was clinical. So we've not really missed his goals. But yeah, it would be nice if he had a little run. He's going to get his first goal at some point. So maybe I'll go 2-0 Watkins Diaby.
I wanted to say 2-0. Right, 3-0. 3-3-1, and McGinn to score, Cash to score, Watkins to score, Diaby 2 assists, and Dougie 1 assist from a corner. I don't know who's scoring that corner, but
Yeah,
John McGinn.
maybe John McGinn volley edge of the box.
Yeah, we both know he can't score a header, so that is the one thing about John McGinn. He has unique talents and very unique weaknesses as well.
Yeah, do you remember? I think I was watching the game with you last season when.
He tried that diving header.
Yeah, I think it was one of Gerard's last games. It was that point where we were just depressed. Everything went wrong. Every player looked awful.
Yeah,
Everyone was turning on McGinn, especially. And yeah, it was like a shot that he should have just volleyed. It was down his knees, and he went for
yeah.
the diving head.
Didn't get it on target. It was
Oh,
horrendous.
brilliant!
But yeah, no, I think that's a decent prediction. I think I'll go for Edouard score for them because I know he scored at least two.
Yeah,
Or
he's
was
he's,
it two
he's doing
assists? I
well.
can't remember.
I
Yeah.
might actually get him in fantasy because I need to upgrade João Pedro,
Hmm.
and so my current plan is get rid of Onana for either a 4 million or a 4.5 goalkeeper, and then upgrade
Yeah.
Pedro to maybe we've got Ferguson, but he's just got an injury. Don't know how bad that is, and also he's still a rotation risk, which is weird. Um, Edouard is a definite starter, but he's not got the potential that Ferguson's got for points. And then Alvarez as well. But then once the Champions League starts, I'm worried about his rotation. So I haven't made my mind up yet. But
Yeah. Do you know what I was thinking the other day? Eddie Alvarez looks really good on the ball for West Ham.
West Ham, yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't watched.
Like I thought he would just be this kind of immobile sort of anchor in the team, but then I saw him
Yeah,
getting forward on the ball, and I was kind of like, his feet are actually pretty mad for a guy who's playing that kind of role. So I'm even more sort of, they do call it bullish on West Ham this season than I was before. So
fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I was just reading about Luton to be fair, and a few Luton fans saying that they deserved it. They deserved the point against West Ham.
maybe.
It was Luton. Did you watch it?
No. I saw. Actually, do you know what? Did I watch? I think I had it on
It
and
was
saw like
Friday
a
night.
few. I saw some bits of it, but I didn't fully watch
Yeah,
it.
I don't know. I don't know whether it was because Luton played really well or because West Ham weren't brilliant. But
Hmm.
wow, the XG. They lost 2-1. Luton 2, West Ham 1 XG.
Fair
Fuck.
play. I'm still bullish on them. I think they're just. I don't know. I don't know if they're just getting lucky, but they look good.
Well, they're a good team, and the thing is, they scored a set piece, and we've obviously said this. They've signed Ward-Prowse. Their centre backs are fucking massive. They've got
They
David
were,
Moyes
yeah,
as
they
their
were
manager.
already good at set pieces.
Yeah, they're already So even when they have a game where they lose on the XG, because they're such a threat from set pieces, it kind of gives them like this whole other element where they don't even
Mm.
necessarily need to play that well, but they've just constantly got a threat from set pieces.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think they don't mind giving up high XG because they often give it up between the lines of their midfield and defence in a deep block, which means there's
yeah,
so
that's the
many
thing.
players
Yeah,
there in the way to block it anyway.
yeah,
Like the XG might be higher, but it kind of doesn't paint the full picture.
yeah,
You can have say three clear-cut chances that generate you 1.5 xg, and then four or five lower value shots, and you have a low number of shots and a high xg. That's like a good counter-attacking return if you're going to win a game. But then, a team that's on the ball a lot and playing high up the pitch, a lot of their chances they create aren't clear cut, but their overall
yeah,
XG will be higher just because the volume of shots close to the goal. So if West Ham can play in a way that limits shots from good teams by just having good quality players in a low block, making it as effective as possible, and then getting decent XG off a counter and set pieces, it's a legitimate way of winning games in the Premier
oh
League.
yeah. I mean,
So
it's what people were saying about Villa, how we were massively overperforming our XG at the end of last season, but Emery plays in a way where we create chances on the transition where we will have three attackers against three defenders, and so the chances will be really good chances. And even because like sometimes you get a, a similar looking shot, but there's three defenders in the way, it will be the same XG. Um,
yeah,
but because we've done the transition, we don't play like a Man City where you pass the ball around the edge of the box and they've got everyone in their box. We play on the transition where they have no defenders about, where the shot might be from the same position as a shot when you've got 10 defenders in the way, but obviously it's a much better chance.
yeah,
So yeah, now yeah, West Ham are scary. They've just got a solid system, don't they? And they've got good players.
yeah.
Um,
I don't want to
but
play them, to be honest.
no,
Well,
we'll,
they're
we'll
obviously not
be
the
in.
best team in the league, but just in terms
We'll
of
be
like
in.
highest level of potential embarrassment, probably comes at playing West Ham away and losing like 4-0 from three set pieces in a counter attack or something.
Fuck, that could happen. To be honest.
Yeah, it just scares me because especially like we played differently against Liverpool than we normally would do away from home. It's
Yeah,
like how we're going to adjust. I don't know. So I'm
yeah,
just gonna let that one come and go. I think for me, when it comes to my fantasy, I don't know what to do. If I'm going to take a player out, it's either going to be I want to give Watkins one more game because like he's got assists, but I need goals from a striker really, and there's a lot of strikers scoring goals, so it's hard to keep him if he's not going to score
yeah,
goals. I'll give him the Crystal Palace game. If he doesn't score in the Crystal Palace game, I think I'm going to have to drop him. Diaby I'll still keep. And Buemo's at Newcastle away, so it's like I could drop him, but then who do I bring in? I don't know.
I mean, if you haven't got anything to fix, like just leave it. I don't. The only reason I'm actually doing a transfer, I'm quite happy with my team in general, but I just want because I play in 3-5-2 and Pedro is my second striker.
Mm.
Last week I played Archer, which worked really well, but I don't want to play Archer every week, so I just want another striker who I can feel comfortable starting every week.
Yeah, let's talk about Archer as well. Fucking hell.
Yeah, man.
Instant impact. We knew how good he was, and now he's showing it. Surely, surely we have to activate a
Yeah.
buyback
Well,
clause for
what's
players like
interesting
this.
was I was reading about the release clause. Apparently, I don't know how true this is, but there's a relegation buyback clause
Yeah,
where if they get relegated, we can buy him back for the same money that we bought him for,
yeah.
that we sold him for. Sorry, so we get him for 18 million if they get relegated, and then if they stay up, then it's like a normal kind of it'll be 40 million, whatever.
Okay.
Um, so maybe we want Sheffield United to go down, but Archer to also score like 15 goals.
15 is optimistic, but based off what we saw in that game, you never know. Um, yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I did remember listening to the commentator in that game, and he said something like they do have a buyback clause, but only if they get relegated or something. So there's clearly some kind of relegation involved
Yeah,
release clause there, or buyback clause. Sorry.
but yeah,
Yeah,
he just looked amazing, didn't he? Like one really good finish. Then the other one, it was basically his goal where it came off the inside of the post and hit the keeper.
pretty much got him the fantasy points at least.
Yeah.
Oh mate,
Um,
he looks so good. He's shorter than I remember as well. I knew he was short, but against Everton in that Crystal Palace team, he looks tiny.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think there's still, even if he scores 10 goals, I think there'll still be a bit of debate about whether we take him because maybe he's not that all round centre forward that Emery wants.
Mm.
Um,
He's got a
because
very
while
low
he's,
centre of gravity though. Like if you play a ball into him, he will probably keep hold of it, and he'll
yeah,
probably pick someone out.
I mean, this is the thing. Like, you watch him play and you think he's clearly not got much of a physical aspect. He's kind of quick off the mark because he's really small, but I imagine his sort of like top speed isn't that high. He's not particularly bulky. He's not tall. So you think physically he's not really got it, and then you think he maybe couldn't be much of a hold-up player. But he got loads of assists at Middlesbrough
Yeah,
last year, and he was really involved in their build-up. He wasn't just a poacher. He dropped deep. He passed the ball. He took players on. Um, so as much as you sometimes you watch him and you think he's not that all-round striker, actually there is a lot to his game. He's not just a finisher.
yeah, absolutely. And you don't need to necessarily be a target man to enable other players to come into the game. Like a false nine can do it
Yeah,
just as well. Depends what
yeah,
kind of false nine you are, because Diaby obviously plays false nine, but one of the main aspects of his game is playing those 1-2s and getting in behind to create chances for himself. Whereas I think with Archer, it'd be more drop into the midfield to help build up to a point where they can play someone in behind who will then play it back into him
yeah,
where he can score goals. So he'd be not necessarily a Diaby role, but he could line up against Diaby and still produce a functioning attack. You just then limit yourself in terms of aerial ability. I mean, I shouldn't say aerial ability because he is good in the air, but he's just obviously small. So it's
yeah.
harder for him to actually win the
But
headers.
it's not necessarily, it's not like we rely on crosses that heavily. And so, I don't know whether it's kind of nice. It's a nice thing to have a striker up there who has the option of taking on a centre back or getting on the end of a lofted cross, whatever.
Yeah,
But the way that we play, it's not necessary. You can always play like if you played Zaniolo on the kind of left wing coming inside, he's got that height and physicality about him, and the way he plays, he kind of comes into the middle, gets in the striker kind of areas. So if you're playing a team who's got bigger centre backs, Zaniolo can kind of fill that space. Archer could drift to the left in the channel a bit more, maybe. Like it's not a deal breaker the fact that he's not particularly physical.
yeah. Well, I suppose this kind of leads into our little idea for this episode. Essentially, just remove Emery from the equation for the purposes of this exercise, and we're just going to essentially set up the team how we would want to play, and just explain how we would want it to work, I guess. So, do you have like a starting 11 in mind, or are you quite unsure?
Um, well, I tried to find like a website that could do it, and I found this site that kind of it imitates Football Manager, but I can't see how to pick the players. So, have you got anything in mind yet?
Yeah. So for me, I'm just going to sort of explain mine and let you visualize it in your head because I don't have the tech to be. I don't know how you set up a whole. I could figure it out, but I'm not going to get a visual of like how I'd set it up because I'm just not prepared enough. But yeah, so I'd be playing a 4-3-3 with a holding midfielder and two eights. Um, I think just like off the bat as a starting lineup, my instincts are Mings, Carlos, probably Moreno, Konza at fullback, and then obviously Kamara in the number 6 role, Dougie and Tielemans as number 8s, and then I would have a front three. I think our absolute best front three would be obviously Watkins, and then haven't seen Zaniolo enough, or so I'd probably go to Diaby and Ramsey on the wings. Obviously that misses out McGinn. I'm not talking about this in the sort of a whole squad kind of way. I'm just talking about starting 11, absolute best you think we could possibly put together at the club, especially for the play style you want to play.
Yeah,
Um, so while in a real life Villa squad I have McGinn probably starting a lot of games, in this imaginary world where this is the way we play and this is my team, this is how I set it up. Still love John McGinn, don't get. So anyone crying, shut up. But yeah, so do you have like a formation and starting 11 in mind, or?
so I think considering the squad we've got, I think I'd go a similar formation to what we already play. Um,
Well, the three at the back or 4-4-2?
no, 4-4-2. I'd go 4-4-2, and I'd go Moreno and Cash probably. Um, so I mean, you'd probably go Kamara and Dougie in midfield. I'm wondering whether there wouldn't be enough defensive stability without, like, because if we play 4-4-2, we play Konza right back, whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't. I think it, depending on how you play, it wouldn't necessarily be a problem. So I'd go Kamara, Dougie. I'd go Ramsey on the left. Watkins up top. Who goes on the right?
I think you can either choose McGinn, Zaniolo, Bailey, or Diaby,
Yeah,
or Cash if you want to move them forward.
I think Diaby just looks better further up the field. So maybe I'd go Watkins, Diaby, and then maybe I'd go McGinn right mid and
Yeah.
allow Cash to come overlapping. That maybe you can. Maybe I'd have McGinn in a more like maybe play more like a number 8 in that right midfield role. You know how kind of how Jordan Henderson played at Liverpool when Trent would get really far forward and Henderson would fill the gap a little bit.
Yeah.
So he'd kind of be in a right midfield position, but he'd be like a number 8 centre mid really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'd go with that.
Okay. See, with my formation having, so I've got Mings and Carlos at the back, and then I've got Moreno and Konza. So I am keeping the. Oh my god, man! I can't believe you would happen to your phone on. What? sorry,
It's
sorry.
a bit of an
Yeah,
overreaction, mate.
got a bit intense there. No, but
The
yeah.
heat. I thought you like the heat.
Sorry.
I thought you like the heat. It's clearly making you mental.
No. So where was I? Yeah, Konza at right back, Moreno at left back. I've clearly still got the sort of lopsided defence that Emery runs. What
Uh-huh.
my difference is, though, is mainly in the midfield and how I want to utilise Tielemans and Dougie. So what I'm thinking in possession is essentially Moreno pushes up, so you've kind of got a designated front three of Watkins, Diaby, Ramsey, but Ramsey cuts in, allowing space for Moreno on the outside. Classic. And then Diaby stays high and wide, and Watkins stays high and central. Uh, and what sort of happens is you progress the ball through Kamara, Tielemans, and Dougie when you're in your own half the pitch. But as you get into that final third, Dougie then moves across to almost play like a second 10 role alongside Ramsey. So you've got Ramsey here. I don't know how well you can actually look at this, but this is going to be like the opposite way for you. Hang on. So the way you're looking, anyway. Fuck it. I'm just going to do it. Ramsey here, Dougie here, and then you've got like the front three of Watkins, Moreno, and Diaby up here, and then behind that, so you've got like almost sort of a inverted pyramid with no point,
Hmm.
and then below that you've then got another one of Kamara and Tielemans as basically two distributors who can either go out wide to Diaby, Moreno, they can go to the tens, or they can pump it straight up to Watkins if they're in trouble, whatever. And then behind them, you've got a three of Konza, McGinn, and Carlos. Three players who are willing to do defensive work but can also play forward if they need to. So
Uh,
you've got that solid base of like five players who aren't pushing into the box but are sort of creating that almost foundation to build up off of, and sort of try and block the other team in. And then you've still got those deep line midfielders in Tielemans and Kamara to play off of. Um, Probably quite a similar way to the way Arsenal would play if they had a sort of left back that would just charge up the field on the left hand side. So
yeah,
yeah, I suppose you kind of see how that would play out. And then in transition, we lose the ball. You've then got three defenders ready. If they take the ball wide, you've got Mings and Konza to chase down, Carlos in the middle, Moreno's coming back. You've always got Kamara still deep, so he can fill in that back line if we get hit really quick on the transition. Um, Further up the pitch, if Dougie's still there, he's a great tackler, he's a menace. So having those two tens as Dougie and Ramsey gives you that ability to sort of defend from the front a little bit better. When
yeah,
it's someone like Diaby or Bailey or Buendia, while they can work hard and they can put tackles in and be aggressive, they just they weren't sort of brought up as like number eights and proper midfielders like sort of Dougie and Ramsey kind of have been.
yeah,
Um, I know Ramsey's not known for his defending, but it's certainly at a better level, I'd say, than a typical winger or something, because he has had that
yeah, yeah,
experience
definitely.
coming through the midfield. So it gives you that sort of ability to get those three, um, like Watkins. I suppose depending on who you're playing, Tielemans could push up to try and press during their transition as well. But if you're playing a better team, I'd say Tielemans does try and drop with Kamara, possibly fills in at DM role if Kamara needs to sit into the back line, or chase someone down on the wing, something like that. And then sort of Watkins, Ramsey, and Dougie, when we first lose the ball in and around their box, come in as like a triangle and rapidly close the ball down, and just try and cause havoc for whoever's on the ball. And if they take it out wide, then Diaby and Moreno chasing them back from the wings, while they so that to cause them to run centrally straight at Kamara and Tielemans, and then you still got that umbrella of Konza, Mings, and Carlos as that final layer of protection. Three relatively, well, two very physical defenders, one fairly physical defender, and both of the sort of Konza and Mings pretty pacey from what I've seen when they get down to it. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean that's how I'd play, and obviously you can have sweeper keeper Superman behind as well.
yeah, sounds good. Um, so yeah, I'd go with so I'd have the 4-4-2. I'd play Torres. I feel like I just like Torres. He's cool. I think you've got to make the most
Yeah.
of his ball playing ability. Um, my problem with my system is that I'm playing Moreno and Cash currently,
Mm.
both attacking fullbacks. So I think you'd have to play Dougie in a bit more of a limited role to give that protection to the defence. And like I said, McGinn would be a bit limited as well. But then you give Cash more freedom. So in the way that Emery plays currently, if McGinn was playing on the right, he'd be in behind the strikers, and Cash or whoever's playing right back will be a bit more limited.
Yeah.
Whereas my setup here, I'd have Cash kind of occupying that right wing kind of space and McGinn dropping into midfield a little bit. Ramsey on the left as a kind of inverted winger attacking midfielder with Moreno overlapping, and then Diaby kind of dropping in behind Watkins to provide a bit of link between McGinn, Dougie, Ramsey. So that's the kind of system I've got.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it would really... Seems like it's just a shitter version of Emery's system, really. So when you were talking about your system, I was thinking there was this FM save I did. It was with some random like League One team.
Yeah.
But I played. I usually in FM I usually play like I think my instinct is to play on the counter attack. Like some of my favourite teams ever have been Mourinho teams where they'll defend really solidly and then just attack blisteringly quickly.
Yep.
And they'll dominate games that way, and they're not even concerned with possession, but they'll just defend really well and be absolutely lethal when the space opens up in behind. So I usually play that way. But in this one FM save, I figured I'd do like a really dominant kind of high press possession-based system. And I created this weird kind of box thing with the centre-backs and the central midfielders. So I played my left wing-back really, really high up the pitch. And then I also played with a left winger, but the left winger was obviously inverted to allow for a bit of space. So then there was a centre-forward, shadow striker just behind the centre-forward, a winger on the other side who was a bit more limited, and the right back on the other side was a bit more limited, but still kind of playing a wing back. And then the two centre mids, because you've got essentially a striker, shadow striker, two wingers, and then the left wing back, essentially all attackers. So you've got 5 attacking players there.
Yep.
To compensate, both centre midfielders would stay quite deep. And then the way that team, it worked insanely well, and like I completely dominated the league. And the way it worked and the way that the team kept possession, because obviously it's possession based because there was loads of space in behind. So if I lost possession, like I was kind of in trouble. So you kept possession by creating this box between the centre midfielders and the centre backs. And whenever the ball got recycled, that you'd always have 4 players there who could pass the ball between them and
Is it
recycle.
not 3 at the back? Sorry.
No, so it was 4 at the back.
If you got wing backs.
4 at the back, 2 wing backs, and then 2 kind of deep centre mids, and then
basically 2 sixes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. One of them was like a more of a playmaker. One of them was Kamara role, and then one of them was more of a Dougie role where he would try and play passes and influence what's going on ahead of him, but still mainly a defensive player.
So it's kind of like a 4-2-3-1, but the fullbacks are just very, very attacking.
Basically, yeah, it does look like a 4-2-3-1, but usually in a 4-2-3-1 you'd have your fullbacks would be more reserved, but especially the left wing back in this system was essentially a left winger. And it was really attacking, but we pressed high, so that's how you nullified the threat of the counter, and also that box between the centre mids and the centre backs was insanely good at recycling possession. I thought when you were talking about how you'd kind of always have that structure between your centre mids and your centre backs, that kind of thing could work quite well because we've got 2 very good attacking fullbacks, and we've got a lot of options in terms of kind of wingers attacking midfielders. The only thing with that system and our midfielders is that it would limit, whoever you played there, whether you played Tielemans, McGinn, one of those midfielders would kind of be limited in their influence, and you might be stunted.
So I'm limiting Tielemans as essentially a deep line playmaker. But the way it works is when we initially get into the opponent's half and start playing football, yes, Tielemans and Kamara are very, very deep. The 3 centre backs are super, super wide. Or, well, actually, if we're on transition, then they're probably still quite narrow, pushing up the pitch.
Yeah.
helping to cycle the ball. But then once we get up the pitch, as partly the thing is with this as well, is Cons are playing right back and coming as a centre back once we're in possession. Um, I've lost my train of thought. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah. So once we get into that position and we start spending an actual decent amount of time in the opposition half, wearing them down a bit, sort of getting into our patterns of play, that's when it can kind of spread a little bit, and you can push Tielemans a little bit forward to get in between the lines. He won't be as far forward as Dougie, but he'll almost, if we're comfortable, you can then sort of create this weird little diamond. You know how I said you got the sort of three ready to counter press if we lose the ball in Watkins, Dougie, and Ramsey, because Dougie's
Mm.
pushed up and come as a right-sided number 8, number 10 type role, and Ramsey's cut inside as the left-sided 8-10. Um, well, behind that, if you get comfortable and you sort of are just sort of passing it around, looking for those opportunities, looking for those passing lanes to get in behind and create those chances, Tielemans can then push up and form like the bottom of a diamond there. So you've got Tielemans with passing lanes out to Dougie and Ramsey, and then of course if they're playing in little triangles uh, with Diaby and Watkins or Moreno and Watkins at the edge of the box, he's then got free space to roam into that space at the edge of the box and receive a pass back. So he still gets the opportunity to contribute, he just never ends up in the box and only
Yeah.
gets close to the box if we're comfortable in possession and really trying to wear a team down. So that sort of gives him the sort of almost like incentive to make sure he controls the game, because if he controls the game he gets to go forward more, whereas if he can't quite get control of the game or we can't quite open up the passing lanes and we're not so comfortable, then he has to stay deeper in order to protect against potential counters. So it's kind of one of those things where in theory it limits a player, but depending on how the game actually plays out and what the game state is, it can be quite a free roll if it
Yeah.
needs
Well,
to
that's
be.
the thing is, if we're playing if you do manage to control the game and you play like kind of a possession based system, if you're playing two sort of centre midfielders, they are inevitably going to get a lot of the ball if you're recycling possession, and if you're controlling the game, they're going to have plenty of options. Um, so if I played like two centre mids, but then you had say a left wing back playing really high up the pitch, trying to get to the byline, that's actually a perfect situation for someone like me in centre mid to pick up the ball in loads of space, find a long range pass. Same as Tielemans.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting Tielemans because we've not seen anything of him
Yeah,
really.
he's well. The thing is, he's brought in as this sort of deep line playmaker with great technique, but I think people expected him to be too similar to Dougie, and this is why in my system I'm releasing Dougie further forward, because we've seen, given the opportunity, like against Liverpool last season, he's a great crosser of the ball. He's super confident with his feet. He's got a great reading of the game. He can open up space for players really nicely. So I want to get him forward and give him as much opportunity to do that as he can. And we saw, especially at the end of the last season, when he was getting in around the box, he was scoring goals and getting assists.
Mm.
He's a player that's very well capable of doing that. So that's why I use Tielemans in a more reserve role, because while he may be, if you were to ask the general population, they'd probably say maybe he's a better playmaker or he's got better technique. He's not that kind of player who's gonna, you know, have that little shimmy and make that little move and open up a huge amount of
Yeah,
space to put someone in behind when they're in tight controlled areas. He's more that recycler of the ball who can also be fairly press resistant in deeper areas and has got the technique to play really good passes and retain possession, not just it while he's on the ball but passing it as well. So that's
yeah,
why I want to have him deeper, just as someone who's a safety net who we can give the ball back to, kind of like Kamara, who are both really press resistant. Uh, and if the attack doesn't work out and we're under pressure, we can always come back. Having Dougie up there means that we've got that creative player who is also great in defence, to defend from the front if needed. When we then transition in the back, and if we're in a low block, it's basically a flat three midfield where Tielemans and Dougie are on the left and right side, Kamara sat in the middle right in front of the centre backs. Obviously Moreno slips right into left back, Konza pushes out to right back, and then your front three can kind of press and defend however they feel fit.
Yeah. I suppose, do you reckon if it's a game where you're going to struggle to dominate the ball, do you reckon that that system, that team would struggle to get out on the counter a little bit if you're playing three midfielders and then your front three, presumably your wingers, if say you're pinned back by a better team,
Yeah.
wingers are kind of going to be in defensive positions. Watkins is going to be up on his own. Like, do you think there's going to be a bit too much empty space there, and we wouldn't be able to get the ball out?
No, because the way I want to build up from the back, or if we don't have the opportunity to transition quickly and we are kind of blocked in, I want to play the Brighton way and essentially bring Dougie back, bring Tielemans back so they're almost in the back line, um,
Or
essentially
just
floating
invite the
right in front of
press?
the back line, just having as much players available to play the pass to. Let the wingers come back, but don't spring the counter until the passing lanes have opened up and we
Yeah,
can get other players forward to help out. Because if we just hoof the ball forward, as you say, and it's only Watkins up there, there's no point. Right?
yeah,
But at the same time, if there are three players up there and we hoof the ball up there, it's still a fairly risky strategy. So generally, what I want to do is pull players back. So maybe we don't counter as quick, but we give ourselves the opportunity to keep the ball. Because what I see a lot at the moment with our system is when we do go to transition, if we don't immediately get on the counter attack, players push up the pitch and then they just sort of stand still. And I don't know if this is under Emery's instruction. He's like, let Kamara and Dougie find the space and open the play up. You guys just be in position ready for when that happens. I
no,
see
I
I can
think
see why someone would say that, but I just don't like it when I see Dougie there with no options and trying to turn and play, and then he has to go back to the centre backs. I understand that that happens and that's part of the game, but just
yeah,
just jog 10 yards and get in some space. Just move a bit. It's like so
yeah,
frustrating. So that's why I want my team to drop back and really create opportunities for us to play the ball around,
yeah.
no matter where we are on the pitch.
Yeah. Well, in terms of I think Emery tries to do a similar thing as Brighton, where he invites the press, um, and he gets centre backs on the ball, and that's why he's so insistent that we always play out from the back, is because he likes to invite the press, and then
Yeah.
space opens up, and then we play on the transition really quickly. Um, yeah, I don't know what it is that's not really worked. Obviously against Liverpool and Newcastle, I don't know what it is.
Well,
It's like I know what
that's
you mean. I
sort
know the
of
exact situation.
what I've observed is when Brighton are in that position, they're not scared to go back and bring players back to start again. When we go
Yeah,
back, we it's almost like the other midfielders and wingers and attackers kind of have a bit of arrogance about them, like, oh, they're fine, they'll do it, they don't need me, I'll stay up here. I don't know if it's arrogance, but you know what I mean. Like the sort of they don't view the sort of building up almost as a whole team activity. It's almost like, yeah, we'll
yeah,
leave that for the guys at the back, and maybe we'll come help if we get close or something like that. Against smaller teams where we really dominate possession, we tend to do that a little more, and it tends to be a little closer to this ideal sort of tactic and way of playing that I'm sort of talking about. But especially against Liverpool, just the lack of movement when Dougie was on the ball, turning, going, let's play forward, and just no one is moving, and he's just stuck with no options and
yeah.
then
I know
has
what
to
you
go
mean.
back to the
I've
centre
noticed it
backs.
as well. Like you just,
Mm,
yeah, bit of a lack of movement, and maybe we run out of ideas if the obvious pass isn't on immediately, then we kind of panic a little bit, and then we won't just recycle and start the cycle again.
yeah,
We're kind of just like, oh shit, there's not a pass on, and then you've lost the ball because you get pressed or whatever.
yeah.
Um,
I think too often we do get into that situation and then eventually just try and force it, and that's when we lose the ball.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think it'll improve though, but it's interesting whether Tielemans will get more of a like, if we can continue to look a little bit iffy, things aren't clicking. I wonder whether Tielemans will find a place in the team, but I struggle to see Dougie or Kamara getting dropped really because they're so settled and neither of them have really had a bad game.
Yeah,
Um,
it just takes a
Tielemans,
game like the Hibernian one where they start all three, sort of thing.
yeah, I mean Tielemans played he played like sort of a Ramsey role, didn't he?
Almost, yeah.
Um, so I guess maybe that will become his position, rotating there. But
I highly doubt it. He doesn't have the pace. He doesn't have
no,
the dribbling. He doesn't. I
That's the
think
thing.
in
Ramsey
that
relies
game,
on
yeah,
his
he was,
ball progression.
yeah, he was just a safe body to put in there and keep the ball
Yeah,
and keep things going. Against Hibernian, when you're 5-0 up, you don't need to
no,
have a great player in every position,
yeah,
as long as you have a game plan to not lose 5-0 basically.
yeah. It's interesting because obviously when we signed him, kind of we both thought that we kind of just signed him because he was a really good player who's available, and say Dougie got injured, he could play there. Basically, he fit
Yeah.
the bill perfectly for like a squad player, free transfer, whatever. But sometimes I just think like if things aren't really working, we've actually got an insanely good player there on the bench. It
Mm.
seems weird to sort of not use it, but then at the same time, the system's fairly settled, and there's not really an exact spot in there unless it's Dougie's place. But there's no reason to replace Dougie, so I wonder whether maybe we could play Diaby on the right wing and put Tielemans behind Watkins. But then again, he's not very. The system would have to change because Tielemans in the Diaby role behind Watkins is very dynamic, and Tielemans is not that kind of dynamic, quick,
Yeah.
agile player.
I think the reason Tielemans hasn't got in is more to do with McGinn um, than the system. I
Mm,
think if McGinn wasn't McGinn and he wasn't playing the way McGinn's playing, we could see more of a three in midfield with a more traditional forward line. But because of Uno's system, because he wants to get John McGinn in there, is playing this special hybrid right mid 10 kind of role, then as long as he still thinks that's the best way to play going forward, Tielemans will probably still be on the bench. And unless
yeah,
he decides to change the system, then as you say, yeah, Tielemans will likely be the rotation second option.
yeah. I'd like to see him get more of a role. I guess to be fair, we're like 4 weeks in. We haven't really had the full brunt of the cup competitions, etc. So
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm pretty sure he will get a much more of a role as the season goes on. But
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
when you look at the Conference League, like if we get to semi-finals and things, you set up very differently to league games in knockout competitions. So
yeah,
I'd expect there'll be a lot of, well, maybe not a lot of rotation, but at least a lot of tinkering when it comes to
yeah,
those sorts of games if we get there, where people like Tielemans may well play a much bigger role and be quite satisfied with that.
yeah,
So
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it'd be good if we had a way of testing our systems, really, wouldn't it?
yeah, maybe we need to just be real life coaches, go and coach some kids and be like, right, you, Timmy Smith, in attack, I want you in a hybrid 8-10 role, pinging balls over to the left-hand side of the box for Tommy, who's going to run in and probably fall on his face, but we'll give it a go anyway. But yeah,
I don't think I'm cut out for that, man. I
yeah,
think I'd get walked all over. I'm too meek.
yeah. I think I'd just get too frustrated and end up making a kid cry. Couldn't do it. I'd be like, no, this is not the way.
You got your pep vision and
Playing
not
Jones
doing.
ball. Yeah. All right. Anyway, should we wrap it up then? A bit of a short podcast for today.
I suppose so. Yeah. I mean, it kind of probably would have been longer if we didn't get the last one copyrighted, but it feels a bit weird to go and say everything about the weekend's games that we already said a couple of days ago. So
Yeah. Well, it's kind of out of date information now. A lot of it we sort of said before the game, and
true. Yeah.
I tried to upload it on the Saturday so that at least if people are going to watch it, it's before the game. It got to 97% and then just threw its toys out the pram basically. So Sunday morning, I then had to get up at like 6 o'clock, try and get it re-uploaded, and it didn't even fully upload by the point of the game starting because my internet's
No
shit.
shit.
And then by the time it did, it was like, sorry, copyrighted. And I was like, oh, God. But luckily, yeah, it didn't count as a copyright strike for whatever reason. So it's just like a warning.
Yeah.
Don't do that
No.
again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. Wrap it up. I guess next week we can do one after the international break. We'll talk about what inevitable terrible injury we've probably got that's threatening the team.
Possibly. Could also do a proper Slipper Sessions episode instead of Footballocks. We haven't done one for
Yeah,
a little while.
yeah, sounds a good shout actually.
Yeah. All right, put that in your diaries. Anyone who's watching.
Anyone who wants to waste 2 hours of their life.
Next week we're going to talk about completely random shit that's got nothing to do with football. So Yeah, I hope you look forward to that. And if you have got to this point, thanks for watching. Greatly appreciated. Like, subscribe, and follow, and all that. And yeah, we'll probably see you again next week if we're not lazy.